Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Ethics 2018, the fifth year that we've done this event. And we describe it as a dialogue in the state of ethical leadership in American business today. We're delighted that you've taken the opportunity to join us this evening. I know it's going to be a robust and very informative conversation. I'm Dan Sweeney, the director of the Institute for Enterprise Ethics here at the Daniels College of Business. And before we get started, I'd like to invite the Dean of the Daniels College of Business to welcome you to this evening's event. Dean Crate.
Thanks very much, Dan. Welcome. Good afternoon. We are thrilled to death that you're here. In many ways, this represents the very best of what we do. This is just an extraordinary panel, and I know that Doug will make introductions in a short while. You know, like all things of substance, this event and Dan's really incredible work does not occur in a vacuum. It takes a pretty considerable effort from lots of individuals, and many of you know Ashley, and you probably don't know how much Doug Scrivener contributes. He's got an advisory group. There is what we refer to as a guiding coalition that's been to service. But at the end of the day, there must be someone who is accountable ultimately. And that has been Dan Sweeney for the last several years. And the yeoman-like work ethic, the passion and the commitment that he's displayed really demonstrably across certainly my brief tenure here is just something that has inspired me. And in many ways, this is a culmination of it. And so, in addition to welcoming you and our esteemed panel, I wanted to take this moment as this is the final event of the current academic year to express my really sincere appreciation to Dan for his incredible work. I think he knows this. I want to make sure you know this as well. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be some small part of it. And please just join me in, again, thanking Dan for making sure.
What Brent didn't say is that, as I describe my career in this job, is I'm in the 7th year of my 3-year assignment. So the Institute would not exist, and this particular event would not exist if it were not for the generosity of our sponsors and support of our partners. And you've been seeing their names on the loop back here while you were waiting for us to come out. And I'd like to recognize them formally now. Charter partners, these are people who have made, or companies that have made a significant investment over a significant period of time. And the first one I want to mention is CoBank, our inaugural charter sponsor. And if it weren't for CoBank, we wouldn't have gotten this thing off the ground. So thank you, Jim. And I don't know if Andrew's here yet or not, but anyway, thank you, Jim. The other charter sponsor is now CenturyLink. It used to be Level 3. And they're the ones that are helping us create a global platform or a global footprint for the Institute through their global internet platform. And we are live streaming this event tonight. The third charter sponsor is the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative, which is a significant supporter of the Daniels College of Business and the Institute of Enterprise Ethics in that process. Hosting sponsors for Elevate Ethics 2018 is IHS Markit Incorporated. Program sponsors who help support a variety of programs at the Institute are Deloitte LLC, Newmont Mining, and a number of very generous individual champions and friends of the Institute. Important partners of the Institute include the Colorado chapter of the National Association of Corporate Directors, the University of Denver chapter of Net Impact, the Global Association of MBA Candidates, Rock Solid Design, who's responsible for these great graphics and the video production. And of course, I want to thank our host, the University of Denver and Daniels College of Business. Thanks to all these sponsors and partners of the Institute. We appreciate your support. So now, why are we here? Well, we're all familiar with what we read in the paper, see on the TVs, the reportage, the editorial opinion, the commentary on the blogosphere, regularly criticizing the current state of corporate integrity and corporate responsibility in today's corporate leadership. Public opinion polls consistently report the low esteem that executives leading large corporations are held and how those institutions are held. But the public very seldom has the opportunity to hear what the business community actually has to say about these things. So far, it's kind of been a one-way conversation. So one of our goals here with Elevate Ethics is to provide a platform, a forum, a voice for that discussion. We intend this dialogue to achieve three goals. First, to provide a platform for corporate leaders to comment on their view of the state of corporate integrity and responsibility in American business today. What is the view out their window as they look at the economy within which they operate? Secondly, to provide a forum for the exchange of ideas, the dialogue on the effective development of ethical leadership in business organizations. And third, to help to advance the case for high standards of integrity and high standards of responsibility in our business institutions and their leadership. To help us in this dialogue and pursue these goals, we've got three outstanding operating executives here with us on the panel from three leading business organizations. Now, you can help us in this process, too, to develop this dialogue by participating in tonight's discussion. We will provide the opportunity for you to ask questions of our panel, and please don't be shy, as you can be the second part of this two-way, or the third part of a three-way conversation. You also have a skilled and experienced moderator to keep the discussion on point and well-balanced. Mr. Doug Scribner is the chairman of the University of Denver's Board of Trustees. He's a graduate of the University's Sturm College of Law, where he is also an adjunct professor. He is a great friend of the university, and he's a great friend of the Institute. Doug retired from Accenture Corporation in 2011 after 31 years with the company and 14 of those years as its general counsel. During his tenure, he also oversaw the company's government relations and served as corporate secretary, compliance officer, and as a member of Accenture's executive leadership team. Mr. Scribner has participated in and held leadership positions in several educational and professional organizations, including serving as chairman of the visiting committee and as national co-chairman of the Second Century Campaign for the University of Denver's Sturm College of Law. He also served as a member of the Board of Visitors for the Sanford Institute of Public Policy and as a member of the Arts and Sciences Campaign Committee for Duke University. Doug received a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and History from Duke University, a Master's of Science in International Relations from the London School of Economics, and a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Denver Sturm College of Law. So with that, please welcome this evening's panel moderator, Mr. Doug Scribner.
Thank you, Dan, and thank all of you for being here. Let me just first comment briefly on what Dan has done with the Institute for Enterprise Ethics. It's a hidden jewel at the Daniels College of Business and the University of Denver, and does a remarkable programming and has an incredible future ahead of it. Let me also thank Brent Kreit for his leadership at the Daniels College. exciting things that are going on at Daniels. And obviously, ethics has been an important part of Daniels for a very long time, and really starting with the wonderful gift of Bill Daniels and infusing ethics and ethical considerations throughout the curriculum and other activities of the College of Business. So I will briefly introduce our panel today. You have the pamphlet that has their background, so I won't recite all of that, but let me just quickly go down the line, and then we'll open up for conversation. David Eves, my immediate left, is Executive Vice President, Group President, Utilities, and President of Xcel Energy Colorado. Serves as the Director of the Public Service Company of Colorado. He's had a series of roles across a number of years at Xcel Energy that has led to his current positions. David received a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Kansas State University, and you'll see that he has an extensive record of public service and charitable and not-for-profit service with Mile High United Way, Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, Boys and Girls Clubs of Denver, and a number of other areas. So, David, thank you for being here. Nancy Beasy is Chief Financial Officer and Executive Vice President of Newmont Mining. You'll see in her bio a number of other organizations where she has served in financial roles. She was also a partner at Ernst & Young. In addition to bringing the financial and CPA perspective, she's an independent director of a couple of corporations, UMB Financial and Zia Chem. So she brings the director's perspective as well as an executive's in the financial perspective. So welcome. Nancy. Then Pete Lorenzen was appointed IBM's General Manager, Global Technology Services, Networking Services in January 2015. He gets the prize for the longest title. And also serves as IBM Colorado's Senior State Executive. So in his current role, he holds global responsibility for strategy, offering development, sales, and delivery for IBM's networking service line. And as Colorado's Senior State Executive, he's responsible for IBM's relationship with both state and federal agencies and IBM employees. He's been with IBM for a number of years, as you'll see, and has had roles throughout IBM in its Global Technology Solutions Group. He's also an active community leader with roles at the Colorado chapter of the March of Dimes, University of Colorado at Boulder's Leeds School of Business, for which we'll forgive him for tonight. Sorry. Pete, welcome.
Thank you.
So we will start with just asking each of our panelists to share some general thoughts, perhaps some perspective on their careers and how that may influence how they think about the role of ethics in business and in their businesses. And then we have some set questions that we will go through, but we're going to save time so that all of you can ask questions as well. And as Dan alluded to, the issues of ethics and trust and confidence in business are as important today as they have ever been. You only need to look at some of the kinds of research. Many of you are familiar with the Edelman Trust Barometer. Yes. The 2018 results, just for the informed public, the confidence and trust in business executives and business generally fell 23 points in 1 year in the United States. The United States moved from roughly number 5 on a list of 25 or 30 countries to dead last in their list of countries and the level of trust following such noteworthy countries as South Africa, Russia, Colombia, and I mean it just tells you something is amiss perhaps. Gallup, in their polls of honesty and ethics in the professions, business executives are way down the list, right above advertising, members of Congress, and car salesmen. Lawyers score a couple points higher. Now that shows you you're in trouble if business executives are ranking lower than lawyers. So serious issues. Hope you have some terrific conversation tonight. With that, we'll just go down the line, and David, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, thank you all for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this. So I'm with Xcel Energy. I have a lot of opportunities to visit with people, both inside our company and outside the company, and I find that typically don't get to have a conversation like this outside of our industry or company. I find myself talking about some things that are extremely important to our company. We are if not one of the most progressive environmental leaders in our industry. We're extremely focused on safety for our customers, our employees. I mean, we deal with dangerous stuff and we have to take care of the public. And we've done a great job, and we continue to do a good job reducing bills for our customers and changing the experience, moving to a new modern grid that will facilitate solar and all kinds of things. So we feel really good about what we accomplished, but outside the company, we don't typically talk about how we do that. And I think when it comes to this subject and ethics and values and how companies work and leadership in these dimensions, this is a chance to talk about it outside. We do talk about it inside. So I appreciate the opportunity to engage in the conversation in that vein. But I'm not used to doing it, so I was a little bit nervous about how this will go. So our company maybe part of this is the industry that we're in. We have the same kind of expectations of our customers that Newmont Mining or IBM or a university would have. But I think maybe due to the nature of our business and that everyone depends upon us, we have probably, at least we believe, that we take on a very high form of responsibility to maintain the confidence and the trust of our customers, our regulators, the elected officials in our state that we serve, our cities, and so on. Kind of a quasi-governmental role, if you will, in that we provide safe energy service for everyone. So we try to hold ourselves to a very high standard. We've been recognized by a lot of different organizations that evaluate these kind of things. But I'll just share a few things that we're very focused on. Very focused on making sure that we have an inclusive makeup and success in our company that reflects the diversity. We operate in 8 states, and the makeup of things in Texas or New Mexico is very different than the makeup in Minnesota of our customers and employees. So that's a big focus of ours, and we're really happy to be recognized as one of the top LGBT companies in the industry. Another thing I will just tell you is that our vision is to be the trusted and preferred provider. And every time our CEO talks with us, Ben Folk, he emphasizes this trust. It's one thing to be chosen. It's another thing to be trusted. So I think that plays to this issue of ethics and how we do what we do in a sustainable way. So I look forward to the conversation.
Great, thanks. Nancy.
Great. Thanks very much for having us here tonight. It's an interesting discussion, and what a backdrop we have. I was thinking about this in the last week, 2 interesting events. Congressional hearings on Facebook's privacy policies, Starbucks store closure to handle anti-bias training. They're shutting everything down. These are 2 really important parts in our lives, and I think both of them are going to be somewhat historic in nature. And so what I'm seeing is that the public is really demanding higher ethical standards from their companies and certainly from their leadership. And I feel like forums like this and getting us outside of our walls and talking with other constituencies is incredibly important. We feel like inside our organization, these conversations have to happen. We operate in many countries all over the world where cultural norms, such as we operate in Ghana and Australia, Suriname, Peru, as well as in the United States. And there's so many differences of opinion about what ethics means in some of those different jurisdictions and how people carry out their duties. And what something is very black and white from a US standard may be entirely gray for very good reasons in other places. And so one of the things we spend a lot of time is really trying to understand those, working with our legal department, our compliance department, and our HR department, as well as the operations, to understand the business, what are the drivers, and how can we become most effective. We also find that there's a lot of engagements with different types of parties, from investors who, Newmont's investors are largely in the UK and in Europe. We're hearing a lot more discussion around, tell us about your ESG issues. How do you work with your board? How do you think about diversity? And so all the way from that to what goes on in our boardroom on a quarterly basis, and many discussions about, have we had an ethics violation? Do we need to talk about compliance? And how do we manage that within the company? And like others, we're also spending a lot of time, we all run great businesses with people who do things very well. We've spent a whole lot more time lately talking about the how you do things and making sure that part of leadership development training, and we're walking the walk and helping people really understand that these issues are very important, and how you'll be viewed as a leader today and backwards in history is really reflective of how we conduct ourselves. And I think having a high standard of ethics is incredibly key to that process. So it'll be a good conversation.
Good, thank you. So we're having a discussion on ethics, so I want to do full disclosure up front. Some of the time I'm going to give you my own opinion, and at other times I'll give you the opinion of IBM, and I'll try to discern between the two. So I'm going to start off a little bit with my opinion. And I think if you look at a business, and if it wants to survive for the long term, it really is going to have to incorporate ethical standards beyond laws, ethical standards into how it does its business. But I think it also has to take a very active approach, and that means setting really clear expectations for all the employees in the business, in the firm. Number two, making sure those are practiced in all the transactions on a day-by-day basis, and really having accountability. And accountability for me, it starts at the top and goes down to the bottom, but it can flow from the bottom back up to the top. So employees can hold management accountable for the same ethical standards. So if we look at US business, and you mentioned this a bit, you would think we're horrible in the US. And we've heard about Facebook and data privacy. If you're in the tech space, Oracle is suing Google right now for plagiarizing 3 million lines of code. That's a big deal. I don't know any business where certainly the CEO, the leadership, has survived in the long term if they didn't incorporate ethics in their business. So if we look in the last year or so, we have United Airlines, Wells Fargo Bank, Equifax, the founder of Uber, that was just a month or so ago, all out because of ethical violations. So I think the approach, if you're a US firm, and particularly if you're a US firm doing business globally in other countries, much like your firm, is you have to worry about culture. So there's the corporate culture, but it's also the culture in which you conduct your business. So I had the opportunity to work in India for 2 years, and that was a total eye-opener for me. And I'll give you 2 simple examples. It's a custom over there, at least in the city of Bangalore where I live, that if you're flagged over by a policeman, you don't get chased down. They're on foot and they flag you over for a traffic stop and they're going to give you a ticket. Most of the time you have the opportunity to give them money. It's a bribe and it's accepted. It's done out in public. Can you imagine that in downtown Denver here? Another example is if you're going to do business with the government, it's very common to build into your bid a payment schedule. And those are bribes. You bribe people based on their level of government. And I thought maybe this was the case back in 2008. And I did some research a couple of days ago. It's still going on. It's still all over the place. So we have laws in the US that forbade that. If you're a US-based company or you do business in the US, you can get fined for giving bribes. But I don't think adhering to laws is sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So now I want to switch as an IBMer. Some of that was my experience as an IBMer, but I want to talk about as an IBMer in a big corporation. We've taken a different approach to things. So the company has adopted a 3-pronged strategy or a 3-pronged approach to imbuing ethics in everything we do. And it comes down to very clearly setting expectations for the employees, then reinforcing practices that in turn reinforce the adherence to ethics, and number 3, accountability. So for example, in expectations, like I'm sure your firms have, we have corporate standards, corporate directives, and they talk about how do we treat each other, men versus women. There is no verse, we treat each other the same, or our religious affiliation or our sexual orientation. It goes to falsification of documentation or plagiarism. So it covers all those basic things. But now it's moved into social platforms. So for example, if I want to go out and participate in a public blog or write something on Facebook, I have to do so as an individual. And if I'm going to do so as a member of the corporation, I have to clearly state that's what I'm doing, and I have to follow and represent the corporation. I also have to get permission to do so. Recently, it's extending into artificial intelligence, and that'd be a fun topic to talk about. So we hear about AI, and what can AI do? We're making great strides in using AI in cancer treatment. But our chairman, Ginny Rometty, who's a woman, and that's an important point for our discussion later, recently came out with a set of statements around artificial intelligence and the importance in being transparent, that when somebody is dealing with an AI program, that they're actually dealing with a program, they know it's not a human being there. Where does the data come from? How is it making decisions? So this is an area 3 years ago none of us would have thought has an ethical component, at least very few of us in business. In terms of, how do we apply these practices? We train every employee. We have over 380,000 employees in the corporation, and every year, every single employee has to go through business conduct certification. And we offer it in 28 languages to make sure everybody understands their obligation. And everyone's obligation is to report when they see ethical violations, and it's every manager's obligation, my obligation, to act on it in a timely manner. And then there's the accountability. The accountability is at the highest level. So over my 35 years, it's not something you brag about, but I've had to let employees go because of the way they treated other employees or the way they treated customers, all ethical violations. We had a senior vice president that was forced out of the company for sharing proprietary information. So it goes up and down the food chain. So as we talk through this today, I think if we really want a sustained ethical business environment, it's really around setting clear expectations, managing those on a daily basis, really proactively, and then holding people accountable and letting all that transform as our culture, our society transforms over time. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Pete. So, if you're a historian, you can trace over many, many, many years waves of scandals, corporate scandals of various kinds, and the regulatory responses to them. Just looking back in relatively recent history, in the early 2000s, we obviously had a period of accounting scandals and governance scandals involving the likes of Enron, WorldCom, HealthSouth, Adelphia, and others. So we had Sarbanes-Oxley that was going to fix all of that. We had Section 404 internal controls. We had the PCAOB for the audit profession. We had independence of directors, all kinds of other governance standards, codes of requirements, codes of ethics, and everything else. So in the mid-2000s, these scandals gave way to issues involving investment management scams, mortgage securitization, other financial instrument malfeasance, insider trading, and of course, theoretically, Dodd-Frank fixed all that. And then more recently, we've had scandals of the nature of intentional business wrongdoing, the VW emissions scandal, Wells Fargo, the prescription pricing exploitation issues, opioid prescription promotion, and the like. It seems that as soon as we get our arms around one set of behaviors, something new pops up. So the question I have for the panel, Nancy, maybe start with you. In the last 15 years, have we made any real progress? If we have, what prompted it? If we haven't, why not?
Yeah, I would argue no. I actually pulled some statistics on this. 3,000 execs interviewed for E&Y's global fraud survey. 42% said they could justify unethical behavior to meet financial targets. Wow. That was last year. Despite increases in program time and resources devoted to measuring and improving culture, we've seen less than a 1% increase in the average employee's perceptions of a positive culture. That was last year. This was earlier this year. The share of employees who report being treated rudely by colleagues at least once a month has risen 13 percentage points since 1998. So my concern is just reading the papers daily and watching what's going on in business. People are talking a lot about it. People are making programs and dedicating resources, and they're doing a lot of things, but culturally, I don't think the behaviors have evolved, and I don't think that necessarily leaders are getting folks on board with really acting in the right way in all cases. And we see that with the headlines that we're viewing. So I unfortunately would argue we're not making a lot of progress.
Pete, how about you?
So the answer is I'm really not sure, but part of the problem is going to be where you draw the data from. So this is the State of Ethics and Compliance in the Workplace, published in March by Ethics and Compliance Initiative, ECI. It's a global survey, but they just did it for the United States. And what it would show is we have seen some improvement. It's modest, very, very modest. So observed abusive behavior, example 2013 to 2017, it's gone down 1 point. I mean, that might be survey error, who knows, right? Observed conflicts of interest, gone down 1 point. If you look at the graph, you can't see it, but it shows there's a mild decline. So I think there has been some improvement. I think part of it is going to unfortunately be how you measure it and the biases of the people doing the measurement.
Okay, David?
I guess I would just add, and maybe I'm an optimist, or, see the glass is half full, 3/4 full. I think part of what's happening is we're raising the bar on ourselves. I think more and more companies, more leaders, more customers expect something different. Maybe we're acting a little bit different with Uber given what we found out about the company, as opposed to how enamored we all were with the rideshare before. I think that is happening, and I know in our company and the people I associate with on boards, there's I believe an extreme focus on trying to continue to question ourselves and make sure that we're operating at the highest standard we can, and that we push ourselves instead of ending up on the front page of the paper. There will always be these kind of things happening. I think it's going to move around a little bit like poverty has a tendency to move around a city. But I think it is getting better, and we will continue to.
So you hinted at it there. David, let me just start with you then. Do we think we can ever get ahead of this? Is this just human nature? We'll constantly be playing whack-a-mole, or grabbing onto the balloon and get control of it here and it pops out over there? Is that?
No, there's always going to be problem children. There are always going to be bad things happening. And in fact, if it got to a point where there was no news, there was no scrutiny made public, there were no findings, I think we'd probably relax and fall back on our laurels and not continue to raise the bar. I just know that, and I know our company's not the only one, but we challenge ourselves, like, how would we know? We survey employees about things like this that we never would have thought of doing 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's like, are you comfortable reporting something, even if you don't know it's a problem, would you question it? And then reinforce how important it is that they feel empowered to do that they feel it's their responsibility to do it.
And safe?
Exactly. It's a little bit like I talked about safety. You can get fired if you don't stop work in a dangerous situation. It's like expecting us to make ourselves improve.
Right. Pete, can we ever get ahead of the game?
I think the game keeps changing, and you can try to anticipate. I think the way you assess a company is its true attempts at trying to anticipate and avoid problems, and then, as importantly, how it deals with those problems. And I like Starbucks coffee, but putting that aside, I was impressed, and I was listening to Rush Limbaugh, and he was all over it. It was negative, and I said, it's pretty impressive when a CEO comes out and says the buck stops with me, and then they're willing to forego revenue for a day to bring everyone together. You can get into where should the two gentlemen have been thrown out. Just put that aside. The fact that they took such a proactive step, I give them great kudos. Would you have seen that 30 years ago or 40 years ago? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Nancy?
I think we have to try. I think, to your point, I think the target keeps moving, but I think we all owe it to ourselves and our companies and our constituencies to really think hard about how can we try to get ahead of this. We may keep falling short, but I think we have to do all the right things. And to the point you made about reporting and having a safe avenue, it's been an interesting journey at Newmont because we have the same thing. We have a reporting tool, and we've seen the use go up very high. And there was discussion in the boardroom around, okay, we're getting a lot more cases, tenfold what we had last year, and how do we feel about that? Well, you actually feel good about it because people are starting to, it's not that there's more bad things going on, it's that people are feeling comfortable talking about it. And so now we started watching what's the substantiation rate. So we may have X hundred cases, but how many of them are legitimate? And that's not what we watch. But there's no negative connotation whatsoever for any of the operators or anyone else associated with the actual reporting. So I think the tone and the tenor around how we evaluate these things and what our objectives are will continue to morph. But the fact that we have the avenues open and the open communication, I think is positive, and we have to keep trying.
So how does leadership of the enterprise try and attack this? Is it a bigger, longer rule book? Is it principles-based, values-based orientation? Is it culture? All of the above? I mean, David?
I think it's culture, it's leading by example, it's walking the talk, it's actually taking action to reinforce what you've asked the organization to do. Maybe in a tough situation where you lose a really valued employee or a major piece of business or something like that.
Right.
But we all know that we face situations where you have to make these kind of choices, right? We all do. And I think when the CEO, when the board takes action on certain things that rise to their level, it reverberates and it says something.
If you do it publicly. Maybe not naming
Right.
names, but you got to talk about it or nobody knows, right? Or the rumor mill actually goes in the other direction.
Where there's a void, something will fill it.
Right.
Information.
Right. Pete?
Absolutely modeled from the top down. The one thing I'm impressed in my corporation, we have a chief trust and compliance officer. Probably like yours, we have independent audit boards, totally separate from the primary board and the chairman. But I do think it comes down to setting clear expectations, having practices that implement those, and then really accountability. And if you don't do all three and nurture them on an ongoing basis, like I pointed out with ethics change, the context in which they occur. If you don't deal with it that way, you're not going to be successful. So,
Nancy?
I think it's culture and climate. I think it's core values, and I think it's you can't take ethics and compliance and put it on the shelf and say this is our initiative du jour. This
Right.
isn't something that we're going to do this year, and we're going to think about it the way we do other initiatives. I think it has to become part of the core values. And I know when I go to site, I go to the pre-check meetings on both shifts, so 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., and it's a discussion about safety, but it's also a discussion about very much tied to what you all do. If you see an unsafe environment, you stop immediately. But same thing now is caught on in the discussion with those folks on every shift, is if you are not comfortable with something that's going on your watch, stop, say something or do something. And if you don't feel comfortable having that conversation with your supervisor, call the hotline. But whatever you do, don't fail to act. And so again, I think the leadership and the executives and managers all the way through the organization have to reiterate that message. And it's not something we're going to evaluate you on for your short-term bonus. It's part of the culture and the expectations that come with employment. I think that's the part that has evolved.
Typically talk about tone at the top. I would argue that in many respects, it's actually more the frozen middle, as we used to call it at Accenture. And that's, how do you get the, all up and down the organization? But it's sort of really the middle. You lose people not because of what the CEO did, but it's what the activities of their manager or their supervisor. So how do you get the middle managers to understand and buy in and
think it's accountability. I know we've had a situation not too long ago where we ended up having to let not only, there was an issue with a middle manager who was no question needed to be terminated, but we also let go their executive, and it was a hard decision, but you just cannot allow the organization to see that it's singular in the organization. So there's accountability all the way up, and we're holding people to that. And you're right, that middle level of the organization has such an incredible impact on the entire place. But if we don't hold folks accountable, both up and at that level, we will never succeed.
I agree, it's accountability at all levels. I mean, I've seen within IBM, I won't mention the country, and it's not India, where there were practices going on in the middle management on down. We took out multiple layers of management because of that misbehavior, but then the executives were taken out because they should have known. Even though they weren't involved, they should have known.
Right.
So.
Yeah. David, any other thoughts on that?
So one of the things that we try to do is in leadership meetings is reinforce things that are working. And I think I've seen this happen, not a lot, but you take on something like this where there was a difficult situation, and we give out an innovator award or an I Deliver award for usually accomplishing something really wonderful in the company or whatever. But those kind of things are starting to be recognized. We're trying to not just hold people accountable and leaders accountable, but reinforce, without disclosing all the personal information, reinforce the positive things that a manager or director may have done.
Celebrate the heroes.
Exactly.
Right. One of the toughest areas and one of the ones where you get the misalignment and the not walking the talk is with the superstar, the rainmaker, and which is a nice segue to our next topic. So one of the big news stories and business stories of this year, especially but not exclusively by any stretch, in the entertainment business has been gender harassment, sexual assault, and related issues in the workplace. And much of this behavior, I think, has been properly identified as being a product of disparities of power, promotion and compensation between the genders, and prevalence of male-dominated cultures in organizations. So, and that's clearly where you see the Harvey Weinsteins and go down the line, the folks who are too important, but ultimately now being held responsible. So, but why is it so hard to change a pervasive institutional gender bias in an organization? Is it a matter of more laws, just more staff in HR? I mean, we already got lots of laws, but why is it so hard? What do we need to do more? Maybe David, we'll start with you. How do you think about making real progress on those issues of gender equity?
Yeah, this one is hard. And I think back over my career and watched, the handful of female employees in a power plant probably get subjected to, 20, 30 years ago, treatment that nobody would think about that occurring today. But to the point of your question, so I mean, we've come a long way. But I don't know that there is an easy answer to this. I may sound like a broken record, but I come back to the fear of public retribution that now exists. I mean, probably like never ever before. The recognition that even if it happened 10, 15 years ago, you're going to get called out on this, and you're going to have to be accountable for it. I think it's that there's a very different standard out there and a different expectation. We'll probably have a lot more of these things reported over the next 10 or 15 years, but I think in terms of the way people, probably not everyone, but I think more people question their own behavior, and as a result of, it's really good that we're having to read about all these terrible things.
Nancy?
Yeah, I probably come at this from a unique perspective. I've spent 20 years between the mining and the energy business, which is not heavily populated by females, and prior to that was a partner with a public accounting firm. Can't even tell you about the partners meetings, but so I have a unique perspective on this, but I also think that there's a lot of opportunities out there, and what I get frustrated with is when I don't see people tracking it the right way. For example, quotas, in my opinion, are not the way to go. That doesn't solve the issue. I think you're far better off removing that forced balance and really thinking about what is the candidate pool? How do we open ourselves up to broader objectives? And how do we create less bias in our hiring so that we actually are finding the best candidates for the job, regardless of any bias? And so one of the things Newmont's actually working on right now is we're doing blind resumes. So you get information about someone, but you don't know their name, you don't know their gender, you just know that they're a candidate with these qualifications, and we'll see how that goes. So I get excited about that, and I also get excited when I'm surprised. The mining business, like I said, is not super female friendly, but first time I went to site in Australia, one of our mines there, 50% of the haul truck drivers are females. And I got on a truck and spent a day with a woman who's a grandma and loves her schedule because she gets to take care of her grandkids, and it's very predictable, and she leaves her job at the office. She drives this enormous multi-ton truck, and she loves what she does. And it was so surprising to me, and I spent the whole flight back wondering, why was that surprising? But I think there's definitely ways around it, and it's not forcing it, and I don't think regulation or more HR is necessarily going to help it. I think it's a different way to think and being creative about how we solve the problem.
Pete?
So we've kind of been coming at this from different directions, sort of women in the workplace in general and equality there, and then pay equality, or which is the question really about in your mind? Either one?
Either one.
Okay. Because we chatted about the pay quality, and I certainly as an individual don't know the answer. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, that you really have to go out of your way to attract a diverse workforce. And whether it's women, whether it's African Americans, whether it's Hispanic, whether it's white people, I want to be hired. Whether it's, and I mean that seriously, you've got to go out there and really be aggressive in your recruiting to get a diverse workforce, because you want the diversity of thought in your workforce. And I think if you get in the best candidates, that's the single biggest step forward. And then certainly there's the must-haves, and we have these in IBM, where we are really careful on how we pay people. And it is not based on gender, and there are checks and balances around that. And I happen to work for a woman who's the most highly paid person in the company, and she should be. She's the chairman. So maybe she's one of a few Fortune 100 CEOs that are a woman, but I'll tell you want to set a tone to corporation, that's a way to set a tone.
Mm-hmm.
So are there some specific one or two things that you've done at IBM that really have moved the ball in terms of gender and power and promotion equity?
Personally, I have, and it was in India. And I hate to keep going back to India, but it was by far the highlight of my career. So I got to go there and set up a division, our Global Technology Services. And when I got there, we had pulled some people together. We had about 2,200 people to start. When I left, I had 6,000. Our plan was to grow in 2.5 years to 10. We did it in a year and a half, and there's somewhere around 18,000, 20,000 people. So it's a big organization. Pretty much everyone in senior management or executive management was a guy. And I was talking to my friend Diane on the way down. I said, one of the turning points I had was I was in a room with my direct report staff and the next layer down, and I looked around the people, and I was thinking, how do I communicate affirmative action, equal opportunity? And I finally just said, what I'm trying to do, it's not about culture. It's not about Indian culture, because there isn't one culture. It really varies by state, and within like Tamil Nadu versus Karnataka, totally different. And there's different languages. And then within that, there's great variances. I said, it's not about the local culture. It's about a business culture. And we have to have a business culture that makes us work. And then I said, wouldn't it be nice to be able to look around this room and have it reflect the rest of India? Because right then it didn't. It reflected a bunch of really young men. And by the time I left, it had changed. And it was really starting to change mindsets, and it's stayed that way. And the people that have come after me, and it's now run by folks that are actually native to India, they've carried a lot of that on, and I'm still in touch with them. So that's the single biggest.
Okay. Nancy?
I think it is. It's tone from leadership. And I think about our leadership team, and it's a unique group of individuals, but everyone feels strongly about supporting diversity and that we are a better organization because of diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, diversity on any scale you can measure, and it makes us a better company. We're worldwide, so there's just so much pull to have unique views, and we found more success when we have a wider group in any setting. I think that's part of it, and I think we've also done a lot of things to empower the organization. So there's a lot of tools out there that folks can use on the ground in their locations. We implemented business resource groups, so there's various, like in Peru, there's the Cajamarquinos, which is a group of just people who are native to site, and they have very different issues versus the other employees at that location. And so supporting those, and every time I go to site, I meet with them. I'll meet with, there's a Women and Allies group in some of our locations, and what's amazing to me is in many cases the allies outnumber the women. So the allies are people who have raised their hand and said, I don't know what to do, but I'm here to help. And that's, we're giving you a free lunch, so show up and we'll figure it out. And it works. And
there is a free lunch.
Yeah, it is. So it's great. And so there's this conversation, and they're spending an hour a month or a quarter just listening, and I think it makes them more understanding and more receptive to truly being an ally. So I think there's a lot of tools out there, but I agree. I think just the commitment from leadership at all levels of the organization is what it really takes to make things happen.
Yeah. David?
So we too have business resource groups. We used to call them employee network groups, but
Yeah.
they're much more engaged in affecting the outcomes in the company. And they become very large, very diverse themselves, and they're not all, ethnic based. They're BRGs around veteran employees and people with different backgrounds that have come into the company. Each of us try to work with a BRG every year, executives and leaders in the company. And one of the things we try to do is like get input about what impediments, what experiences can we begin to look at as, for the company to improve things. Anyway, that's just, it struck me. I wasn't going to mention that. Maybe the best thing I ever did, I just woke up one day and I had a very, very strong team that just hit it out of the park for about a year and a half, 2 years. And somebody pointed out to me, I was the only white male on the team, and it was like, it wasn't all orchestrated or planned, but they've moved to, one of the women is now the president of Excel for Colorado, just as of this week. But they've gone on to do really amazing things in the company, and I think, I don't know, it made a big difference in our company in terms of setting a good example about what can happen. And I think it was the diversity of backgrounds there that really created the kind of result that we were able to accomplish.
When you can't force it. I think that's the other
Yeah,
thing is
very
when you let it develop organically and people self-select to work together, I think that's when the magic
Yeah.
happens.
It becomes sustainable.
Yeah, very much so.
There's
So I
many
shouldn't take any
dimensions.
credit?
No, take all the
No,
credit.
you get a lot. You're the leader. You said it.
Well, you were the token white male. So.
That too.
Yeah, there are so many dimensions to this issue we obviously can't do justice to, but certainly in many businesses like accounting and consulting, more than half the hires today are females, and the
Accounting,
big
certainly.
issue actually is retention.
They don't
And
stay.
trying to figure out what the best practices are to be able to keep those strong performing women from, law firms have the same issue, and whether it's travel or the other demands, other issues in the structure of the business, there's a lot of work being done and a lot of best practices. I would encourage the audience, on March 1st, the Institute actually co-sponsored a half-day seminar on the topic of gender equity with the Colorado Women's College and the Women's Leadership Foundation of Denver. It's very well attended. It was a terrific program on the Institute for Enterprise Ethics website, you'll find a link. You can see a video of some terrific conversation on those topics. We're going to move on to one more topic, perhaps, and that's around sort of entrepreneurship and ethics. So the mantra of the high-tech startup community has been Facebook was move fast and break things. Uber had core values and qualities they sought in employees of toe-stepping, principled confrontation, fierceness, super pumpedness. Zenefits used to talk about ready, fire, aim. So business disruption is sort of the mantra. All of that sort of has a philosophy that seems to encourage ignoring rules, breaking standards of business conduct, disregard for patterns of behavior and responsibility. And we got obviously Uber, Zenefits, Turing, Theranos, Facebook obviously currently hitting the pages of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. It's just inherent in a startup culture. Is it acceptable? How do we think about trying to equip, without inhibiting the innovation? How do we think about helping entrepreneurs think about culture in a more nuanced way, perhaps? I don't know, Pete, if IBM obviously deals in that space a lot.
So I don't consider Uber a startup. They've been around 9+ years. They're a how many billion-dollar company now. So I think they passed the startup phase. First and foremost, I don't think there ought to be different rules. They need, whether you're a startup, and I don't care if you're high tech, you're in a clothing company, you're an advertising firm, I think you all need to deal with the same regulations that all businesses deal with, because they're there for a reason. I think the same principles that apply about nurturing ethics and imbuing them in your company, if you want to survive, you've got to do it. I do think a lot of startups, and I've dealt with quite a few, particularly Palo Alto, Menlo Park area, Sunnyvale, California. They're in a tough spot because a lot of them have put their own money in, or they're in different phases of funding with VC programs, and they've got to produce quickly. But if you want to be around a week from Tuesday, you've got to do it in an ethical manner. So how you teach people to do that, that's a different topic. Should they be held to the same standards? Absolutely.
Yeah. Nancy?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a high-risk, high-reward environment, and I think there's been a lot of examples of where breaking the rules in Silicon Valley gets you great success. So I think that's just a built-in challenge. I think the pressures of developing through a VC and going through every round of funding are in themselves very challenging. But to your point, if you're not going to do it the right way, you won't have the employees, you won't really have the investors in the end. Mm-hmm. I think the Elizabeth Holmes story that's played out over the last month has been fascinating, but there was a lot of bravado there where she kept the funding coming. At the end, there wasn't much of substance, and I think that really cost her. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of good examples of where breaking the rules and that the kind of bro culture has made it effective. But the reality of those companies that have survived and will likely survive, they won't get there by sheer risk and going it alone.
All right. David, any thoughts?
I really don't have any expertise on this, but and maybe it's what you said, Pete. I think there's a fundamental difference between fail fast and disregard for, I'm not sure if there's a gray line, but complete disregard for ethical behavior, for how you treat people, how you pay people. Maybe it is the regulations following the law at that point, even though a lot of us are trying to go way beyond that. But it doesn't make it okay. You can be aggressive, fail, learn, grow, but that doesn't mean you just set all these ethical requirements aside.
Right. May I make one more point? A lot of us, at least I do, my bias when I think of a startup is somebody who wrote really cool code or something like that. And it's far more than that. And I went out, these are just a couple of articles off the web, one from Fortune, one from Dynamic Business in Australia. And they talk about startup firms that are focused on truly issues that are very important to people these days, like how do you grow your own food, or how do you invest in companies that, if you look at behind the curtain, are very ethical companies in where they source their products from. So we've seen over the last several years a whole set of startups coming along that are in this space, and almost their business model is built around a higher level of, ethical or social awareness anyway. So.
Okay. We actually had planned to do another topic, but I think given time, we're going to talk about Facebook, perhaps, privacy, cybersecurity. But let me open it up to the floor. We can do that if we have no questions, which I think is unlikely. But we've got a terrific panel here, so be delighted to hear questions. We'll start with Jim. We got microphones coming, so please wait. And
So you've all talked about a fairly positive approach to ethics and executive behavior, which I appreciate, and I appreciate the sort of the positive kind of a notion that have come out, particularly of 3 very mature companies. Where does it come from? What is the nucleus that drives the behavior that 3 executives that we're talking to today? Where does it start? Where does it continue to grow from? Did it grow from the bottom up, or did it grow from someplace else? And I'm really trying to poke at the board, but if indeed it is the board, please share with us how you see it and how you see it progressing and continuing.
IBM, what are we, 104, 106-year-old now? I should know that, sorry. Tom Watson, if you go back and actually look at the stuff, the thoughts and the policies he implemented a long time ago, they've just sort of, that was the nucleus. There's just, in my company, no question about it. And the people he brought in and surrounded himself with. Maybe that's very unique, but it really did start with the founder. And then the culture has just grown. And the culture is a lot different now than when I first got hired. But it started with the founder.
Yeah, my perspective is actually, I think it's a lot driven by a bunch of different constituencies. So Newmont's 99 years old, but it's a company that there's a lot of input from shareholders. There's also a lot of input from the communities where we operate. So we have everything to do with social license, and we can't do something in a country if we don't have the support of the community. So I believe the whole concept of doing the right thing, regardless of whether it's truly popular with the shareholders, but if it's right for the communities where we operate, that means an awful lot. So I think there's a lot of drivers for that. Our board is certainly a driver, and I know I haven't been at Newmont all of that long. I'm in my 2nd year there, but when I interviewed for the job, it made a whole lot of difference to me as to the tone of the executive team and some of the others that I worked with. And were they people who shared the values, and I didn't want to be swimming upstream. I'd come from a more entrepreneurial company where we were leaders of that thought because we were more the founders and we wanted it to be a certain way. But I would say at Newmont, it's very much the culture, and it's been handed down as we've had to work successfully in different jurisdictions.
David, any thoughts on that?
So I would just add maybe 2 other sources of energy for this. One, and probably
Given the
No
business
pun
you're in,
intended.
that seems
No.
appropriate.
no pun intended. But I think probably all companies, either within their own company, in recent history, last 10, 12, 20 years, experienced something that really had to be dealt with, that the board had to deal with. In our case, I don't think there's anything in that time frame, but there's a recognition about the potential for the dramatic impact to shareholder value, to our reputation with our customers, with our regulators. And so a lot of people leading the company or helping manage the company have experienced that, and they know it. And I don't think anybody wants to repeat that. So So there probably is a fear of that happening and a need to continue to be proactive to stay ahead of it, to continue to raise the bar for ourselves instead of finding yourself on the paper. And probably the other thing I would say would be, maybe more so than a lot of other companies, we're a bit more of a creature of public policy. Just a regulated utility has a lot of people that can make decisions about our future. And if we're not a good contributor in the community and a solid corporate citizen in all these ways and more, there will be a price to pay. So it's very important. I guess
You are in a tough business. You really are. You're out there and, yeah,
Yeah,
and you guys do well at it.
Jim, to your question, I mean, values and culture can't be transient, can't be
Right.
changed on a whim by a new CEO. It seems to me it's organic. It's in the history of the company and
It's
the
in the
DNA of the
genes, yeah,
company.
the
And I think the board ultimately has to own protecting, changing as necessary, but protecting the things that work in terms of culture and values. That would be my view, certainly. Got the blonde lady over here. Oops, right here.
Thank you. Is this on? It's on. And thank you for this terrific discussion. It's great insight. I have a question for any panelist who wants to respond. What is your advice for business schools in terms of teaching ethics? I'm an adjunct up in economics at the University of Colorado, and I teach a course on antitrust, which is all about competitive strategy. And it has to do with markets and incentives, and we dig deep into things like, well, internally, employees should not be engaging in conduct that would lead to illegal collusion, for example, or other forms of illegal behavior that runs afoul of the antitrust laws. The way the business schools approach that issue is very different than how the economics departments would approach that issue, or even how law schools would approach this issue. So, we're in the thick of a really important transformative era in ethics, and we have the great expertise here of three executives. What is your advice for business schools and law schools for how to get ethics embedded in the curriculum?
So I know you don't want me to say the name, the lead school of business, we have Caesar. And so the curriculum at the lead school, part of the business core is ethics in business, and it starts freshman year and it goes throughout the 4-year curriculum. So they've acknowledged, and I agree with this, that students coming out, if they don't understand social responsibility, ethics in business, they're not going to contribute the way they need to contribute. So.
I would just, for the gluttons for punishment, there's a recent book called Seeking Adam Smith by a retired emeritus professor at the University of Texas Business School, which raises some fascinating questions along this line. And his primary thesis is sort of the informal curriculum in business schools in particular, sort of downplays, if not ignores, ethical considerations, and has created a couple of generations of business people who just don't even recognize that there are ethical issues to confront. So it encourage you, for those who are interested, to find that book and read it. But there's a lot that can be done in the curriculum. I could talk about the law school, but I won't. David, did you have?
I would add one suggestion. This probably will never fly, but I think having a course, having it be a separate piece, like our compliance training, or that twice a year corporate code of conduct that we go through and certify. We have to do that, but what really makes a difference is having this be one of the things that I would talk about with my boss and with my reports at a quarterly connection. When we're talking about how things are going, when we finish a project, when we celebrate, getting a wind farm built or approved or whatever, it's like to talk about how things went through the process. So in terms of advice in the program, don't make it all be a formal ethics separate piece. Have that be part of the economics class, have that be part of marketing, whatever.
I would even think about it in terms of how you communicate during that process, the soft skills of leadership. To me, it's very entwined, and when you think about all the things you need to know to move up through an organization and be successful in your career, it's not a separate topic in my mind. It's intertwined in how you learn to manage people. That's a skill that people don't often learn until much later in their career, but this is something you can start teasing out and helping people understand. It's a core competency in today's world. You know, you need to know how to run an Excel spreadsheet. You also need to know the difference between right and wrong, how to recognize that, and what to do about it when that line is very, very gray, as it is in many instances.
Okay, we got right here, and then
Just an answer from someone not on the panel, but you just made me think about something. But I think the soft skills are really important. And one of the things that we do at my company is around training employees how to deal with issues, right? But it's around techniques for how to put the issue on the table, how to articulate it in a way that you'll be heard, and you know what to do if you're not heard, and to do it in a way that it's received and creates a dialogue. So the reason that's important, I think, is because tone at the top is important, but lots of ethical issues come up every day at the working level. And while you want employees to come and report if there's something wrong or seek guidance, you also want them to be confident enough to work with each other or to challenge their supervisor or to, you know, to work to find a solution that's an ethical solution.
okay, thank you.
Great point.
You got up in the top, Andy. Get your exercise.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Cecilia Ortega Lagos. I'm actually part of the executive MBA program here at DU. Find this conversation very interesting. We actually went through an extensive leadership course that dealt with ethics. Had an amazing teacher who taught us through that. And throughout the course of our time in the Executive MBA program, we have discussed ethics throughout our whole time. And as I'm listening to this, I see the importance, of course, of the ethics conversation. But my question is around the global experience. Nancy, we've actually had someone from Newmont come and speak to our class. As we are approaching our international trip, and I happen to work for an international company myself, we're finding that the ethics conversation is completely at a different level with the competition that we're finding internationally. I think a lot of the conversation that's taken place thus far is national here within our own boundaries, where we as very educated folks here amongst this room have certain ethics that we understand not only on the business side but also the personal side. What we're finding globally is that this game is not the game that's being played by many others in the global areas within business. And so I'd like to see how is it that you all are focusing on that? We're looking at the U.S. no longer being the leader in 5 to 10 years in global markets. We all know that China is doing quite a bit. They've entered into several different markets, and through our studies and through just seeing what I'm seeing in my company, the game has changed. So I would like to know from you guys what it is you are doing as executives in combating that, and how you would teach younger folks that are leading towards those executive positions on how to be able to play in that field when we're taught that really you should follow the ways that we know are the right ways to do things.
Yeah, the answer is actually really simple. It doesn't matter. If you think about the countries, and there's some of these very much where we operate, but you take country A, and one of our biggest goals is to hire as many locals as we can. So these are people from the local culture, and they're used to doing business in their own way. And we're competing with companies who are also local. And you sit there and you say, okay, we're going to do things according to our standards in this way, and the local management will look at you and say, but we can't be competitive, or that's not how things are done here, or don't you understand, we need to bribe to get things done.
Right.
And that's where it's so important that the people in the field, in management, understand it doesn't matter. We are a US-based company, and we have a code of conduct that we expect everyone to follow, and it just doesn't matter. So yes, maybe that makes you less competitive, but we also think at the end of the day that it's how you do things that really matters. And I would say in all the countries where we operate, Newmont is very well regarded, and they have ended up over time, no pun intended, becoming the gold standard, because it's true. You know, it sort of evolves, right? Because I look at our country, and there's so many different ways you could go with this topic, but America used to be very highly regarded in so many ways, but I think an American company, even operating in a lot of different jurisdictions, can still be highly regarded, and it's the way people want business to be done. And if you think about it, it just, again, it goes to all the constituencies, all the communities where we operate, even helping set standards for the governments that may be, you know, more of a banana republic and they haven't had to have their own standards. They're now developing because they see the way we do things. So it does make you less competitive in some ways, but you have to take a very long view, which we do as a minerals company, and you really step back and say, what's the right answer here? And it's no different.
Yeah. Pete, as a global company, IBM certainly.
I think you said it perfectly. You just don't compromise on
Absolutely.
certain things.
Yep.
And there's legal ramifications and there's long-term business reasons that you do that. You don't. So I will tell you from experience, there's a lot of customers where we've bid work and we've lost on price. And then a year and a half later, they're back saying, we're going to rethink this because it's really not working out over here.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot to be said for value, a lot to be said for value. And that often trumps, you know, a few dollars here and there.
Time for one more quick question.
This has been wonderful. Thank you. I'm Jenny Gasparo with the American Red Cross. And I am curious how each of you, there's so many rigors in running a business and realities of making a profit, et cetera. How do you prioritize these conversations in your kind of day-to-day work?
David, you want
to? I don't know that I give it a lot of thought, but I think some of my previous comments, we find ourselves talking about how we do things all the time. And in the review of a project, setting goals, putting a team together, this is part of the discussion. So it's kind of interwoven. That's when it works the best. If it's a bolt-on, if it's a separate piece, oh, did you take your training? That doesn't work. It really has to be an inherent part of the way we approach a project or a team that is put together, whatever.
We've all talked about culture. You know, it's just part of the fabric. It has to be reinforced, but it's part of the fabric. So it's not a separate activity.
I agree. I think it's totally woven into the way we do things. I can remember a time in my career when I was probably not a very good manager when I used to think of people issues as a separate category. It's like, let's get the work done and then we'll come back and talk about people issues. And I learned very quickly that that's not how it works. If you want to be a successful leader, it's all one and the same. And I think the exact same thing applies. This is just a different thing we all do, but if it's not completely seamless with the rest of the actions that you take and the way you truly think about your business and your team, I don't think you can be successful.
We could obviously go on for the rest of the evening, but we are out of time, so join me in thanking our terrific panel. And we'll let Dan get back up here.
So I have to say, and I mean this with all sincerity, this is probably the best discussion we've had on this stage over the past 5 years. Well, partly because it was personal, it was frank and open, and I really appreciate it. It was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. So, David, thank you very much for being so frank with us, and Nancy, great experiences you had, you shared with us. Thank you very much. And Pete, I don't know, some of you know that I spent the last 5 years of my W-2 career with IBM as well, and I
hope you agreed with what I
I
said.
reinforce everything you say. In fact, I'm going to give you all a little hint. When Pete talked about sort of the culture of IBM coming out of the Thomas Watson, who founded the company, 1904, something like that. There's a great book called Father and Son, and it's a story about IBM as it was built and run by Thomas Watson Sr., and then turned over to his son, Thomas Watson Jr., and how that culture and those values just stayed. They got stuck in IBM. And Doug, thank you very much for the insightful questions and keeping things on target. And on time, I might add. So let's give Doug and Dave and Nancy and Pete another round of applause and thank them. And thank you all in the audience here tonight on campus, as well as everybody that's watching on the live stream, wherever you might be. We appreciate your participation in this dialogue and in your investment in promoting ethical leadership in our American business institutions. And I ask you to keep the dialogue going. There's lots of ways to do that, one of which is to visit the Institute's website once in a while and see what people are talking about, what's going on, add your own spin to what's being said there. And the website is in these programs. You'll see it there, but it's really an easy website. It's www.enterpriseethics.org. Simple. The video of these proceedings will be posted on the Institute's website as well. And again, you can find that address in your program. One more item. As many of you know, the Institute for Enterprise Ethics is a fully self-funded organization. Inspired of Dean Kreit's extraordinary, abundant personal support of what we do, we don't get any money from the college nor from the university. We get other kinds of support, like we don't have to pay rent here. So. But anyway, if you'd like to join our outstanding list of sponsors, we would love to have you. It's an open door for you. Again, our website is the place to go, and there's an easy link to become a sponsor. Now, so we're just about done here. We've got a reception scheduled in the Commons of the Daniels College of Business over here. So walk out the front door and you'll see a great big brick building on your kind of left by left. It's right over there. You can't miss it. So there'll be appetizers, there'll be refreshments, and a lot more dialogue, I hope. So just follow the signs and follow Ashley. Where's Ashley? She's got to somebody's got to lead this parade over there. And I'll see you over there later on. So thank you all again, and thank you again.